Riley Nash had exactly 3 minutes left on her sensor calibration duty when everything went wrong. The young cadet sat cross-legged beneath the control panel in the secondary monitoring room, running her scanner over a circuit board that had been glitching for days. 22 years old and still proving herself worthy of the family name, she focused on the readings with determined intensity. Her grandmother had been a legend in the fleet. Riley desperately wanted to be half as good. The horizon's edge drifted through empty space on what should have been a routine training mission. 15 cadets, 8 instructors, and a skeleton crew of veterans showing the next generation how real deep space operations worked. Riley had drawn the short straw for evening maintenance, but she didn't mind. Quiet work suited her better than the constant chatter. In the common areas, a sharp metallic screech tore through the ship. Riley's head cracked against the underside of the panel as the vessel lurched violently to port. Red emergency lights flooded the room, and the alarm system wailed with ear-splitting urgency. She scrambled out from beneath the console, her toolkit scattering across the floor. "All hands, this is Commander Wells. We are under attack. Proceed to evacuation stations immediately. This is not a drill." Riley's heart hammered against her ribs. "Attack? Out here in the neutral zones?" She grabbed the edge of the console as another impact shook the ship. Through the small viewport, she saw a massive shadow slide past. Something huge and dark, bristling with weapons. The intercom crackled again, but this time the voice was strained. Electromagnetic pulse detected. Main systems failing. "Evacuate now." Riley ran for the door. The corridor outside strobed with red light, and she could hear the distant thunder of boots as the crew rushed toward the escape pods. She turned left toward the nearest evacuation point, but a blast door slammed down 3 meters ahead, cutting off her path with a decisive boom. "No, no, no." She spun around looking for another route. Another blast door dropped behind her, sealing her into a small section of corridor with only 2 rooms. The monitoring station she'd just left and a storage closet. Her communicator chirped. She yanked it from her belt. "This is Cadet Nash. I'm trapped in Section 7 Delta." The blast door's static answered her. "Hello? Anyone?" She switched frequencies, trying every channel. Nothing but white noise. Riley forced herself to breathe slowly. Training kicked in. Assess the situation. Find solutions, survive. She tried the manual override panel beside the blast door, but the screen was dead. No power. The pulse weapon must have fried most of the ship's systems. Through the walls, she could hear a strange sound. Something scraping, methodical, and patient. Metal on metal. Getting closer. The viewport in the monitoring room gave her a limited view of space outside. Riley pressed her face against the cold glass and saw the attacking ship properly for the first time. It looked like a predator's jaw, all sharp angles and cruel design. Cravath. She recognized the hull markings from her xenology classes. Her blood ran cold. The Cravath were hunters. They didn't destroy ships, they captured them. Captured the crews, especially crews from species they found interesting. A hissing sound made her wheel around. The storage closet door was opening, but not from the inside. Something was cutting through the lock mechanism with precision. Riley backed against the far wall, searching desperately for anything she could use as a weapon. Her toolkit. She dove for it, grabbing a plasma torch and a heavy wrench. The storage closet door slid open with a pneumatic sigh. Nothing emerged immediately. Riley waited, the plasma torch trembling in her grip. Then she heard it, a low clicking sound. Communication, maybe. Or laughter. A figure stepped into the corridor and Riley's breath caught in her throat. The Cravath stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms ending in clawed hands. Its body was covered in dark, chitinous armor that seemed to grow from its skin. 2 large eyes, vertical pupils narrowed to slits, fixed on her with obvious intelligence. The creature's mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Human," it said in heavily accented English. "Young, alone." Riley didn't respond. She kept the plasma torch pointed at the alien, though she knew it wouldn't do much against that armor. The Cravath tilted its head, studying her. "You run from pack, separated, this is good. Huntmaster Dravik will be pleased." "Stay back," Riley managed to say, hating how her voice shook. The creature made that clicking sound again. Definitely laughter. "You are prey, human child. Prey does not give orders." It took a step closer. "Your ship is disabled. Your crew has fled. You are alone with us now. We will see what makes humans so interesting. We will see how long you survive." Another Cravath appeared in the doorway behind the first. Then another. 3 of them now, blocking any possible escape. Riley's grip tightened on the wrench. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Fear is just information, Riley. It tells you the stakes. What you do with that information defines who you are. The lead Cravath reached for her, with one clawed hand. Riley swung the wrench with everything she had. The impact against the creature's arm barely made it flinch. But surprise registered in those alien eyes. The Cravath stepped back, reassessing. It spoke in its own language to the others, and Riley caught the tone. Curiosity mixed with amusement. Spirit, the lead Cravath said, switching back to English. Good. Prey with spirit lasts longer. Makes better hunt. It gestured to the others. Take her carefully. Huntmaster wants this one intact. As the 3 aliens advanced, Riley realized with cold certainty that running was over. The trap had closed completely. Whatever happened next, she would face it alone, in the dark corridors of her own ship, hunted by creatures who had done this 1,000 times before. She raised her pathetic weapons and prepared to fight anyway. Pain exploded across Riley's shoulder as one of the Cravath grabbed her and slammed her against the wall. The plasma torch clattered from her grip, and strong clawed hands pinned her arms. She kicked hard, her boot connecting with something that felt like solid rock. The alien didn't even grunt. Feisty, the creature holding her said. Its breath smelled like copper and rot, but small. Weak. Riley stopped struggling and went limp instead, an old self-defense trick. The Cravath's grip loosened slightly and she twisted hard to the right, slipping one arm free. She drove her elbow into what she hoped was a vulnerable spot under the creature's arm joint. This time it did react, releasing her with a startled hiss. Riley didn't wait. She ducked under the reaching hands of the second Cravath and sprinted down the corridor, past the blast door and threw herself into the maintenance shaft access panel. Her fingers found the emergency release and the small hatch popped open. Behind her, the Cravath roared, a sound that vibrated through the metal walls. Riley squeezed into the narrow shaft and started crawling as fast as she could through the darkness. The space was barely wide enough for her slender frame. The Cravath, with their bulk, couldn't possibly follow, she hoped. The shaft branched in multiple directions. Riley chose randomly, turning left, then right, then left again. Her knees scraped against rivets and her shoulders ached from the confined space. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, she paused to catch her breath and listen. Silence. Had she lost them? A metallic scraping sound answered her question. They were in the shafts, moving slowly, deliberately, hunting. Riley kept crawling, trying to remember the ship's layout. If she could reach the emergency beacon in the communications bay, she could send a distress signal to the fleet. It was her only chance. She found a vertical shaft and climbed down, her arms burning with effort. At the bottom, another hatch led into a darkened corridor. Riley pushed it open carefully and dropped into the hallway, landing in a crouch. The communications bay was 3 sections away. She moved quickly through the empty corridors, the emergency lighting casting everything in shades of red. Twice she heard the Cravath moving through other parts of the ship, their claws clicking on the metal floors. Each time she hid, pressing herself into shadowy corners until they passed. Finally, she reached the communications bay. The door was jammed half open and she squeezed through into the room. Banks of equipment lined the walls, most of it dark and dead from the electromagnetic pulse. But the emergency beacon operated on a separate power system, designed to survive exactly this kind of situation. Riley found the beacon panel and pulled it open. Her heart sank. Someone had been here first. The crucial components were scattered across the floor, deliberately smashed. The Cravath had sabotaged it. No, she whispered. No, please no! A speaker crackled to life above her head, making her jump. A deep voice filled the room, speaking in that heavy, predatory accent. Human female. You run well, better than expected. It was a different voice from the Cravath she'd encountered before. Deeper, more controlled. I am Huntmaster Dravik. This vessel now belongs to Cravath hunting clan Red Talon. Your crew has escaped, but you remained. Curious. Riley didn't answer. She grabbed a piece of the broken beacon, a sharp metal shard, and held it like a knife. The voice continued, almost conversational. We have been watching your species, humans, soft, weak bodies. No claws, no armor, no venom, yet you spread across stars like infection. How we wish to understand. We wish to test you. Test someone else, Riley said through gritted teeth. Drevik made that clicking laugh. You have spirit. This is good. Prey without spirit dies too quickly. Boring. But you, small human, you interest us. We have 3 other specimens in stasis. Chitari insects, 1 Sauron lizard, all prey species. All caught for our collection. You will join them, but first you will be tested. You will show us what makes humans worthy of the stars. Riley's hands shook with rage. They were collectors. Trophy hunters. They captured beings from peaceful species and treated them like animals. You're monsters, she said. We are predators, Drevik corrected. This is natural law. Strong hunt weak. We are strong. You are weak. Simple. Then why don't you hunt species that can fight back? Riley challenged a pause. Those are not hunts. Those are wars. We seek understanding, not death. We give prey chance to prove themselves. Many fail quickly. Some last hours. 1 Chithari lasted 3 days. Perhaps you will surprise us, human. Perhaps you will last longer. I hope so. Your fear smells delicious through the air vents. Sweet and sharp. We are savoring it. The speaker clicked off. Riley stood alone in the ruined communications bay, her breath coming in short gasps. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. Instead, she forced herself to think. The Cravath were playing with her, treating this like some sick game. They had all the advantages, numbers, weapons, knowledge of combat. She had nothing. No, that wasn't true. She had something they didn't expect. She was human. Riley thought about the stories her grandmother had told her. Stories about Earth's history, about humans facing impossible odds and somehow surviving, not because they were stronger or faster, but because they refused to quit, because they adapted, because they got angry. She left the communications bay and moved with new purpose. First, she needed information. If the Cravath wanted to study humans, she would study them right back. She needed to learn everything about her enemies, their weaknesses, their patterns, their physiology. The ship's database was in the science lab. Riley made her way there, moving more carefully now, thinking like a survivor instead of a victim. She avoided the main corridors and used the maintenance shafts, stopping frequently to listen. When she reached the lab, she found the backup computer terminal still functioning on auxiliary power. Riley accessed the xenology database and pulled up everything related to Cravath biology. She read quickly, absorbing details. 4-armed hunters from a high-gravity world. Enhanced strength, thick armor plating. Excellent low-light vision. Weakness. Reliant on specific atmospheric mixture. Vulnerable to extreme temperature changes. Relatively slow metabolism requiring frequent feeding. She also found information about their hunting culture. They worked in packs of 5 to 7. They preferred to disable prey without killing, studying behavioral responses under stress. They had never encountered significant resistance from the species they classified as prey. That last part stuck with her. They had never met prey that fought back effectively. Every species they'd hunted had either tried to hide or run. None had turned the tables. Riley allowed herself a small, grim smile. Time to teach these predators a new lesson. Time to show them what happened when they cornered a human. She downloaded all the Cravath data to a portable drive and started searching the lab for tools. She found chemical compounds, small plasma cutters, medical supplies. Her mind raced, forming plans. The intercom crackled again. Dravik's voice, "You are in science laboratory." "We know. We are coming. Run, little human. Make this interesting." Riley grabbed everything useful she could carry and headed for the door. But this time she wasn't running away. She was moving into position. The hunt was about to change. The Cravath wanted to test her. Fine. She would show them exactly what a cornered human could do. 38 hours had passed since the Cravath took her ship, and Riley had not slept once. She crouched in the environmental control room, surrounded by supplies she'd scavenged from across the vessel. Medical stimulants kept her alert despite the exhaustion that threatened to drag her down. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, assembling a crude trap from parts she'd torn out of a damaged maintenance drone. The Cravath didn't understand human endurance. They needed to rest every 8 hours, their metabolisms demanding recovery time. Riley had learned this by watching them, stalking them through the vents and shadows. While they slept in shifts, she kept moving, learning, planning. She had found the other prisoners 6 hours ago. 3 beings suspended in stasis pods in the Cravath holding area, barely alive. 2 Chithari, their insectoid bodies curled in frozen terror. 1 Sauron, its reptilian features locked in an expression of despair. The sight had ignited something in Riley's chest, a burning fury that pushed past her fear. These hunters didn't just kill. They collected, they tortured, and no one had stopped them. Riley finished her trap and moved silently through the corridors. She'd memorized every Cravath patrol pattern, every habit, every routine. They were predictable, overconfident. They still thought she was prey. That would be their first mistake. She set the trap in Junction 12, where one of the hunters regularly passed during his rounds. A simple pressure plate connected to a canister of liquid nitrogen from the environmental systems. When the Cravath stepped on it, the canister would explode, flash freezing everything in a 3-meter radius. Not enough to kill through their armor, but enough to disable. Riley hid in an overhead access panel and waited. Her muscles ached, her eyes burned, but she remained perfectly still. Patience, another human trait the Cravath didn't expect from prey. Heavy footsteps approached. The Cravath appeared, one of the smaller hunters, moving with casual arrogance. It reached the junction and stepped directly on the pressure plate. The explosion of frost was beautiful and terrible. The Cravath's roar of surprise turned into a shriek of pain as ice crystals coated its body. It fell heavily, thrashing, clawing at its own frozen limbs. Riley dropped from the access panel, landing beside the struggling alien. She had a plasma torch in her hand, the one she'd retrieved from her original toolkit. The Cravath's eyes widened as it saw her standing over it. "Surprise," Riley said quietly. She aimed the torch at the joint where the creature's armor was thinnest and fired. The smell of burning flesh filled the corridor. The Cravath's screams echoed through the ship. Riley didn't flinch. She kept the torch steady until the alien's arm was completely disabled. The joint welded shut with melted armor and cauterized tissue. Then she ran, disappearing into the maintenance shafts before the other hunters could respond to their packmates' cries. Through the vents, she heard them find the injured one. Heard their confused, angry voices. Heard the word that made her smile in the darkness. "Impossible." Dravik's voice came over the intercom 15 minutes later, and for the first time the Huntmaster sounded uncertain. "Human, what have you done? Prey does not attack. Prey does not wound hunters. This is not natural behavior." Riley found a speaker panel and responded, her voice cold and steady. "You wanted to test me. I'm testing you back. You injured Crawl. This is not fear response. This is aggression. Why do you fight? You cannot win." "I don't need to win," Riley said. "I just need to make you pay for every second you hunt me, and I need to make sure you never do this to anyone else again." She cut the connection and moved to her next position. The ship had become her weapon. Every system, every room, every vent was part of her arsenal. The Cravath had numbers and strength. She had knowledge and fury. Over the next 10 hours, Riley systematically made their lives hell. She vented atmosphere from sections they occupied, forcing them into environmental suits. She disabled their communication network using an electromagnetic pulse generator she'd built from science lab equipment. She contaminated their food supplies with compounds that wouldn't kill them, but would make them violently ill. Each attack was calculated, precise. She studied their responses, learned from every encounter. When they adapted to one tactic, she changed strategies. When they tried to trap her, she was already 3 steps ahead. The Cravath stopped calling her prey. Through the vents, Riley heard them talking among themselves in their own language. And she'd learned enough from the database to understand the important parts. They called her the Ghost. They called her unnatural. They called her touched by madness. One of them called her demon. Riley's body was failing. She knew this objectively. Her hands trembled constantly now. Her vision occasionally blurred, and her reflexes were slower than they should be. The stimulants helped, but they were running out. She had maybe another 12 hours before her system completely crashed. 12 hours to finish this. She found Dravik in the observation deck, studying the star field through the large viewport. The Huntmaster stood alone, his 3 companions stationed elsewhere on the ship. Riley approached from behind, moving through the shadows with practiced silence. She got within 3 meters before Dravik spoke without turning around. "You are here, human. I can smell you. Sweat, chemicals, fear underneath. But different fear now. Not fear of death. Fear of failure, perhaps." Riley stepped into the dim light, her plasma torch in one hand, a metal rod in the other. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." Dravik turned slowly. Up close, he was even more massive than she'd realized, his 4 arms ending in claws that could tear her apart in seconds. But his eyes held something new. Respect, maybe. Or concern. 38 hours, the huntmaster said. No sleep? Multiple attacks. Strategic thinking. Vicious efficiency. You are not like other prey species. You are not like anything we have hunted before. Humans aren't prey, Riley said. We're survivors. We're problem solvers. And when you trap us, when you hurt us, when you threaten the helpless, we become something else entirely. What do you become? Riley thought of her grandmother's stories. Thought of humanity's long, bloody history of fighting against impossible odds. Thought of every underdog victory, every last stand, every desperate battle won through sheer refusal to surrender. We become what we need to be, she said. And right now you need to understand something. This ship is mine. These prisoners are under my protection. And you're going to release them and leave. Or I'm going to make sure none of you ever hunt again. Dravik studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed, but it wasn't the mocking sound from before. This was genuine appreciation. I understand now, he said, why humans spread across the stars. Why other species fear you, even as they call you peaceful. You are not warriors by nature, but you can become warriors when necessary. You are adaptable predators disguised as prey, fascinating, terrifying. Do we have a deal? Riley demanded. The huntmaster's expression shifted, becoming serious. No, human, we do not. You have impressed me, but I cannot abandon the hunt. My honor demands. Riley triggered the gravity plating beneath Dravik's feet. She'd spent 2 hours reprogramming it, waiting for this exact moment. The huntmaster dropped hard as gravity increased to 3 times normal. His legs buckled under the crushing weight. Before he could recover, Riley hit the manual override for the observation deck's blast shields. They slammed down, sealing Dravik in while she stayed on the outside. Through the intercom, she said, "You wanted to test me. Congratulations. You passed. You learned what happens when you hunt a human who's done running." She left him there, trapped in his own observation deck, and went to find the rest of his hunting party. The Wolverine inside her was fully awake now, and it wanted justice. The first Cravath died in Corridor 9. Riley had vented the atmosphere slowly, giving the hunter just enough time to realize what was happening before the oxygen disappeared completely. She watched through the viewport as the creature clawed at its throat, its 4 arms grasping uselessly at empty air. When it finally stopped moving, she felt nothing except cold satisfaction. They had called themselves predators. They had captured innocent beings. They had hunted for sport and called it natural law. Now they would learn about another kind of natural law. She moved through the ship like a vengeful spirit, using every system, every trap, every advantage her human mind could devise. The Cravath had strength and weapons. Riley had rage and intelligence, and right now that was enough. The second hunter she caught trying to reach the docking bay where their ship waited. Riley had sabotaged the door controls hours ago. When the Cravath tried to open it manually, she triggered the emergency lockdown sequence. The massive blast door slammed shut with enough force to catch the alien's arm between the metal panels. The screaming lasted for several minutes. Riley listened from the other side, her face expressionless. Then she released the door and watched the Cravath stumble away, one arm hanging useless and mangled. "This is for the Chithari you kept in a cage," she said softly. Though the alien couldn't hear her, she found the third hunter in the cargo bay searching for her. Riley had prepared for this. The cargo containers were rigged with motion sensors connected to the bay's industrial loading arms. When the Cravath moved between the containers, the mechanical arms activated, grabbing the creature and lifting it 3 meters off the ground. Riley emerged from her hiding spot and walked slowly toward the trapped hunter. This one she recognized. It had been part of the group that first captured her. The one who had called her weak. "Remember me?" Riley asked. Her voice was hoarse from lack of sleep and too many hours breathing recycled air, but steady. The Cravath thrashed against the mechanical arms, roaring defiance. Riley walked to the control panel and adjusted the grip, tightening it until the alien's roars turned to gasps. "You hunt prey," Riley said. "You study them. You keep them in cages. You enjoy their fear." She stared up at the trapped creature. "How does it feel?" She left it there, suspended and helpless, and continued her hunt. By hour 45, Riley had reduced the Cravath hunting party from 7 to 3. The injured ones she'd locked in various compartments throughout the ship. They weren't dead. She wasn't a murderer, despite what the rage inside her sometimes whispered, but they were no longer a threat. The remaining 3, including Dravik when she eventually released him, had barricaded themselves in the central operations room. Riley could hear them through the walls, their voices tight with something between anger and fear. She accessed the ship's communication system and broadcast her voice into their refuge. "I'm giving you one chance," she said. "Release the prisoners from stasis. Return to your ship. Leave this sector and never come back. Tell your people that humans are off limits. Tell them what happens when you hunt us." Dravik's reply came after a long pause. "You are one human. Young, small, barely trained. You should not be capable of this. It is not possible." "I'm tired," Riley admitted. "I'm hurt. I've been awake for almost 2 days. My hands won't stop shaking and I can barely see straight. But I'm not stopping. I can't stop. Do you understand? You activated something in me that won't let me quit until you're gone or I'm dead. That's what humans are. We don't give up. We don't surrender. We just keep fighting." Another pause. Then, "What if we refuse your terms?" Riley had prepared for this. She'd spent the last hour setting up a final contingency. "Then I'll overload the ship's reactor core. It'll take about 40 minutes to go critical. Your ship is locked in the docking clamps. I re-welded them personally. You won't have time to cut through. We all die together." It was a bluff. Mostly. She didn't actually want to die, but she would if necessary. That was the thing about humans that other species never quite grasped. When pushed far enough, they would choose death over defeat. They would drag their enemies down with them rather than accept subjugation. The silence from the operations room stretched long enough that Riley thought she might have to make good on her threat. Then she heard the sound of movement, the door opening. Dravik emerged, followed by his 2 remaining hunters. They weren't armed, and their body language radiated defeat. The mighty huntmaster looked diminished somehow, his proud posture gone. "We accept your terms," he said quietly. "We will release the prisoners. We will leave. We will spread word among our people that humans are not to be hunted." Riley nodded, too exhausted for triumph. "The stasis pods first." They walked together through the ship, hunter and human, to the holding area. Dravik personally activated the release sequence for each pod. The Chitauri and the Sauron emerged slowly, confused and weak but alive. Riley wanted to tell them they were safe, but she couldn't find the words. The prisoners looked at her, bloodied, trembling, barely standing, and somehow understood. The Sauron made a gesture of gratitude in its species custom. The Chitauri clicked softly, a sound Riley's database knowledge told her meant respect. "Take them to the escape pod bay," Riley told Dravik. "Make sure they have food, water, and working navigation systems. They're going home." The huntmaster obeyed without argument. While his hunters prepared the escape pods, Dravik turned to Riley one last time. "I have hunted for 30 cycles," he said. "I have faced many species across many worlds. Never have I encountered prey like you. You should not exist. You are too dangerous." "We're only dangerous when threatened," Riley replied. "Remember that. We don't want war. We don't want to hunt you. We just want to be left in peace. But if you or anyone else tries us again, if you hunt humans or keep collecting innocent beings like trophies, you'll find out that there are millions more like me. Billions, actually. And we're all capable of becoming what I became." Dravik's eyes held something like understanding. Or maybe fear. "What did you become?" Riley thought about it. She thought about the rage that had sustained her, the cold fury that had turned her from a frightened cadet into something that could terrify apex predators. She thought about her grandmother's stories and humanity's long history of refusing to stay down. "A Wolverine," she said finally. "Small, underestimated, and absolutely relentless." The huntmaster nodded slowly. "We will not forget this. Neither the lesson nor the teacher." The prisoners departed in their escape pods, coordinates set for the nearest friendly outposts. The Kravath returned to their ship. As the docking clamps released and the hunting vessel pulled away, Riley finally allowed herself to collapse against the wall. She'd done it. Impossibly, she'd survived. More than survived, she'd won. The ship's emergency systems detected the Kravath departure and automatically sent out a distress beacon using the backup system Riley hadn't known existed. Within hours, the human fleet would arrive to find her. Riley sat alone in the empty corridor, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion she'd fought for so long. As her eyes closed, she smiled. The galaxy had just learned an important lesson about humanity. They looked soft. They looked weak. They looked like prey. But when you cornered them, when you threatened them, when you made the mistake of thinking they would simply accept their fate, they became something else entirely. They became Wolverines, and Wolverines never ever quit. Riley woke to the sound of footsteps and voices speaking urgent English. Her eyes snapped open, and she tried to push herself up from where she'd collapsed in the corridor. Pain shot through every muscle in her body. Someone in a medical uniform knelt beside her, scanner in hand, speaking words she couldn't quite process. "Easy, Cadet. You're safe now. We've got you." "The prisoners," Riley managed to croak. "Did they make it?" The medic looked confused. "What prisoners?" "3 beings. Escape pods. I sent them—" Riley struggled to stay conscious. A different voice interrupted, deeper and more authoritative. "We picked up 3 pods on our approach. 2 Chitauri and 1 Sauron, all alive and recovering in our medical bay. They told us a human saved them from Cravath hunters." "Was that you?" Riley nodded weakly. "Had to. They were innocent." The owner of the authoritative voice came into view, a tall woman with commander insignia on her uniform. Her expression was unreadable. "Cadet Nash, I'm Commander Foster of the Heavy Cruiser Determination. We received the automated distress beacon from this vessel 3 hours ago. We need you to tell us what happened here." Riley took the water pack someone offered her and drank before answering. The story came out in fragments: the attack, the capture, the hunt, her resistance. She tried to keep it clinical and factual, but exhaustion made her words blur together. Commander Foster listened without interrupting. When Riley finished, the commander was quiet for a long moment. "Cadet, you're telling me that you alone fought off an entire Cravath hunting party, freed their prisoners, and forced them to retreat?" "Yes, ma'am. That's impossible. Cravath are elite hunters. They've been operating in neutral space for decades. Multiple species have tried to stop them and failed." Riley met the commander's eyes. "They treat their targets like prey. They didn't expect prey to fight back." "I used that," Foster studied her. "You killed one of them. The body is still in Corridor 9. Self-defense," Riley said flatly. "They were hunting me like an animal. I did what I had to do. And the others? We found 4 Cravath locked in various compartments, all injured but alive." "Why didn't you kill them too?" Riley was too tired to explain about lines she wouldn't cross, about choosing justice over revenge. "I'm not a murderer, Commander. I just wanted them stopped." The medical officer finished his scan and looked grave. "Commander, she needs immediate treatment. Severe exhaustion, dehydration, multiple contusions, signs of acute stress response. She should be unconscious right now." "I don't understand how she's still functioning." "Stubbornness," Riley muttered. "Family trait." They moved her to the Determination's medical bay on a stretcher, despite her protests that she could walk. The ship's doctor, an older man with kind eyes, immediately hooked her up to intravenous fluids and monitors. "You're going to sleep for about 12 hours, he informed her. "Then you're going to eat a proper meal. Then you'll probably sleep another 12 hours. Your body has been running on fumes and willpower." Riley wanted to argue but found she couldn't. The clean bed, the safety of being surrounded by her own people, the knowledge that it was finally over, all of it crashed down on her at once. She was asleep before the doctor finished adjusting her IV. When she woke, true to the doctor's prediction, it had been 14 hours. Riley felt like she'd been hit by a transport shuttle, but her mind was clearer than it had been in days. Commander Foster was waiting in a chair beside her bed. "Feeling better, Cadet?" Riley sat up slowly, wincing. "Better than I was." "The prisoners?" "All 3 have been returned to their respective governments. The Chitauri Collective and the Sauron Republic both sent official thanks. They want to meet you. That's not necessary. You saved their citizens from a fate worse than death," Foster interrupted. "They consider you a hero. So does this fleet, honestly. The story has already spread through every ship in the sector." Riley felt her cheeks heat. "I was just trying to survive." "You did more than survive." Foster pulled out a data pad and tapped it. "We reviewed the ship's logs. All of them. We saw what you did, how you did it. The traps, the tactics, the systematic way you dismantled a professional hunting party. Cadet Nash, you displayed combat strategy and tactical thinking that most officers never achieve. And you did it with no training, no backup, and no rest." "What happens now?" Riley asked quietly. Foster's expression became more serious. "That depends. The Cravath government has formally apologized through diplomatic channels. They claim the hunting party acted without authorization, though we all know that's a lie. They've agreed to cease all hunting operations in neutral space and pay reparations to the affected species. They're scared, Riley said with certainty. Druvik will have told them what happened. They're afraid of retaliation. Are they right to be afraid? Riley considered the question carefully. We're not like them, Commander. We don't hunt for sport or collect beings like trophies. But if they ever try this again, yes, they should be afraid. Because I'm not special. Any human pushed that far would have done the same thing. We all have that Wolverine inside us, Foster smiled slightly. Wolverine. The Sauron we rescued used that exact word when describing you. Said you fought like a creature called Wolverine from Earth Stories. Small but ferocious, never giving up. My grandmother's favorite animal, Riley admitted. She used to say humans are the Wolverines of the galaxy. We don't look dangerous, but we absolutely are when we need to be. Your grandmother is Admiral Catherine Nash, correct? The hero of the Frontier Wars? Yes, ma'am. She called me personally. Wanted to know if her granddaughter was all right. I told her you were fine and that you'd made her proud. Foster paused. Riley, I'm going to be direct with you. Fleet Command wants to offer you early graduation and a position in special operations. What you did on that ship, the way you adapted and fought, those are skills we desperately need, especially now that other species are realizing humans aren't as harmless as we appear. Riley looked down at her hands. They were bandaged and bruised, but steady now. She thought about the rage that had consumed her, the cold fury that had let her do terrible things to the Cravath. She thought about how easy it had been to flip that switch, to become something ruthless and dangerous. I'm not sure I want to be that person again, she said honestly. That's exactly why we want you, Foster replied. Because you understand that being capable of violence isn't the same as enjoying it. You did what was necessary, then you stopped. You showed restraint even in the middle of battle. That's not common, Riley, that's special. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. You've earned it. Over the next few days, as Riley recovered in the medical bay, visitors came in a steady stream. The other cadets from the Horizon's Edge, who had evacuated and been rescued by another ship, wanted to hear the story firsthand. The instructors treated her with new respect. Even the admiral of the fleet stopped by to personally commend her. But the visit that mattered most came on the 5th day. Her grandmother arrived on a transport from Earth. Using her considerable influence to reach Riley as quickly as possible, Admiral Catherine Nash was in her 70s, but still carried herself with military precision. She walked into the medical bay, took one look at her granddaughter, and pulled her into a fierce hug. My brave girl, she whispered. My fierce, brave girl. Riley hugged her back and finally let herself cry. All the fear, the rage, the exhaustion she'd been holding back came out in great shaking sobs against her grandmother's shoulder. When the tears finally stopped, Catherine pulled back and studied Riley's face. Tell me everything. The real story, not the sanitized report, Riley told her. All of it. The fear, the fury, the moment she stopped being prey and became a predator, the satisfaction she'd felt hurting the Cravath. The dark part of herself she'd discovered. Catherine listened without judgment. When Riley finished, the Admiral nodded slowly. You found the Wolverine, she said simply. Now comes the hard part, learning to live with it. That rage, that relentlessness, it's part of being human. It's what kept our ancestors alive when saber-toothed cats hunted them. It's what won every war we ever fought. But you can't let it consume you, Riley. You have to control it, direct it, use it only when absolutely necessary. How do you do that? You remember why you fight. Not for revenge, not for glory, but to protect others. You fought the Cravath because they were hurting innocent beings. That's the right reason. Hold on to that. Riley nodded slowly. Commander Foster offered me a position in special operations. I know. She called me for a recommendation. What do you want to do? Riley thought about the 3 prisoners she'd saved, about their grateful eyes. She thought about how many other beings might be suffering at the hands of predators like the Cravath. She thought about the responsibility that came with power. I want to help, she said finally. I want to make sure no one else has to face what I faced alone. I want to teach others to survive, to fight when they need to. I want to be the person who protects the innocent. Catherine smiled with pride. Then you've already learned the most important lesson, Riley. Power isn't about how much damage you can do. It's about choosing when to use it and when to show restraint. You'll make a fine officer, better than most. Riley Nash accepted the commission 3 days later, beginning a career that would eventually make her one of the most respected officers in the human fleet. But she never forgot those terrible hours aboard the horizon's edge. Never forgot the moment when she discovered the Wolverine inside herself. And neither did the galaxy. The story spread far beyond human space. The tale of a young cadet who defeated apex predators became legend among peaceful species, and warning among aggressive ones. Humans, they learned, were more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Not because they were violent by nature, but because they could become violence itself when protecting others. The Cravath never hunted again. 3 months after the incident aboard the Horizon's Edge, Riley Nash stood before the Galactic Council for the first time. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of species. Riley felt small in her crisp new officer's uniform, walking across the polished floor toward the speaking platform. Hundreds of alien eyes watched her approach, some curious, some fearful, some calculating. She was here to give testimony about the Cravath hunting practices. The Chitauri ambassador spoke first, translating her clicking language through a vocoder. The council recognizes Cadet Riley Nash of Earth. We have read the reports of your encounter with the Cravath hunting clan Red Talon. We wish to hear your account directly. Riley stepped up to the platform, her voice steady despite her nervousness. 3 months ago, I was captured by Cravath hunters who had disabled my training vessel. They told me they collect beings from peaceful species to study and test. They keep prisoners in stasis pods like trophies. They hunt for sport and call it science. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Cravath representative, a different individual than Dravik but equally imposing, shifted in his seat. I fought back, Riley continued. Not because I'm a soldier or because I wanted to hurt them, but because I had no other choice. I freed 3 prisoners they'd kept in stasis, 2 Chitauri and 1 Sauron. I forced the hunting party to retreat, and I did it alone. A reptilian delegate from the Sauron Republic stood. We have recovered our citizen, First Scholar Tanis. He confirms your account and wishes to express his eternal gratitude. His testimony describes your actions as heroic and your mercy as remarkable. You spared the Cravath when you could have killed them all. I'm not a killer, Riley said quietly. I just wanted them stopped. The Cravath representative rose, his massive form drawing attention from the entire chamber. The Cravath government wishes to address this council. The actions of hunting clan Red Talon were unauthorized and represent a violation of our own cultural codes. We have arrested Huntmaster Dravik and his surviving pack members. They face judgment under Cravath law. Riley doubted that was entirely true, but she kept her expression neutral. The representative continued. We also wish to acknowledge that human Nash demonstrated combat capabilities far beyond our intelligence assessments. Humans were classified as non-threatening prey species. This classification was clearly erroneous. We are updating our databases and issuing strict protocols. Humans are not to be approached, challenged, or hunted under any circumstances. We formally apologize to the human government. A delegate from the Merchant Coalition spoke up, his melodious voice filled with concern. This council must address a larger issue. If humans who present as peaceful and non-aggressive are capable of such violence when threatened, what does this mean for galactic security? The chamber erupted in debate. Some species argued that humans should be restricted or monitored. Others insisted that Riley had only defended herself and freed innocent prisoners. The argument grew heated. Finally, the council elder, an ancient being from a species Riley didn't recognize, raised one crystalline appendage for silence. We have heard much discussion about human danger, the elder said, her voice resonating through translation devices. But we ignore a crucial detail. Cadet Nash was not the aggressor. She was defending her life and the lives of other prisoners. She showed remarkable restraint. Sparing her enemies when killing them would have been easier. This speaks not to human savagery, but to human principles. The elder turned her multifaceted eyes toward Riley. Young human, you have forced this council to reconsider our understanding of your species. Tell us plainly, are humans a threat to galactic peace? Riley chose her words carefully. Humans don't want war. We don't want to conquer or dominate. Most of us just want to explore, learn, and live peacefully alongside other species. But we will defend ourselves and others when necessary. We won't accept being hunted or enslaved or treated as lesser beings. If that makes us dangerous, then yes, we're dangerous. But only to those who threaten the innocent. And if a species were to attack human worlds, the elder pressed. Riley met her gaze steadily. Then they would learn what I taught the Cravath. Humans don't give up. We don't surrender. We adapt, we persist, and we fight with everything we have. We're not the strongest species or the fastest or the most technologically advanced, but we are absolutely relentless when protecting what matters to us. The chamber fell silent. Riley could feel the weight of her words settling over the assembled delegates. The elder nodded slowly. A fair answer. This council recognizes humanity's right to self-defense and commends Cadet Nash for her actions. We also issue a formal decree. Any species engaging in the capture or hunting of sentient beings will face immediate sanctions and military intervention. The practice ends today. The Chitauri ambassador clicked enthusiastically. The collective supports this decree. We also propose that Cadet Nash be awarded the Star of Valor, the highest honor we can bestow upon a non-Chitauri. She saved our people and showed us that courage exists in many forms. Other delegates voiced their agreement. Even species that had seemed nervous about humans acknowledged that Riley had done the right thing. The ceremony lasted another hour, but Riley barely registered it. She was thinking about the 3 prisoners she'd saved. About the look in Dravik's eyes when he finally understood that humans weren't prey. About her grandmother's words about Wolverines. When the formal session ended, several delegates approached Riley privately. The Sauron ambassador clasped her hand in his species' gesture of deep respect. The Merchant Coalition representative offered trade, agreements with favorable terms for Earth. Even some of the more warlike species treated her with new consideration. But the most interesting conversation came from an unexpected source. A small, furry delegate from the Peaceful Alliance of Herbivores approached Riley timidly. Cadet Nash, I am Ambassador Willow of the Green Folk. My people have been harassed by aggressive species for generations. We have always advocated for peace and negotiation. But your actions have shown us something we did not know was possible. That even peaceful beings can stand up to predators. You should defend yourselves, Riley said gently. Peace is important, but not at the cost of letting others hurt you. Willow's large eyes blinked thoughtfully. Would you be willing to teach us? Not to become warriors, but to protect ourselves when peace fails? Riley felt a spark of purpose. This was what she wanted. To help others survive. To ensure no one faced what she had faced alone. I would be honored. The next 6 months transformed Riley's life completely. She accepted the position in special operations but requested a specific assignment, developing defensive training programs for peaceful species. She traveled to a dozen worlds, teaching civilians and security forces how to think tactically, how to use their environment, how to turn apparent weakness into strength. Everywhere she went, beings asked to hear the story, how a young human cadet defeated professional hunters, how she freed prisoners and showed mercy even in rage. The tale grew with each telling, becoming legend. Some species called her the Wolverine, adopting the earth animal as a symbol of fierce protection. Others called her the Ghost, as the Cravath had. Her favorite title came from the Chitauri, who named her Small Thunder, unexpected, impossible to ignore, and absolutely devastating when necessary. But Riley tried to stay grounded. She visited her grandmother regularly, seeking wisdom and perspective. Admiral Nash reminded her that fame was fleeting, but principles were eternal. You did something important, Riley, Catherine told her during one visit. You showed the galaxy who humans really are. Not conquerors, not pacifists, but protectors. We fight when we must, we show mercy when we can, and we never abandon the innocent. That's the legacy you've created. Riley also stayed in contact with the 3 beings she'd saved. Tanis, the Sauron scholar, sent her regular messages about his research. The 2 Chitauri, workers named Clickwise and Brightwing, invited her to their home world for a celebration in her honor. The visit to the Chitauri collective was overwhelming. Thousands gathered to see the human who had saved 2 of their own. Riley gave a speech about courage and hope. But what moved her most was a simple moment afterward. A young Chitauri child approached her, clicking nervously. Through a translator, it asked, "Are all humans as brave as you?" Riley knelt down to the child's level. Every human has courage inside them. So does every Chitauri, every Sauron, every being in the galaxy. Sometimes we just need the right reason to find it. For me, that reason was protecting others. For you, it might be something else. But the courage is always there, waiting. The child clicked happily and scurried away. Riley watched it go, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with recognition or fame. She had made a difference, That was enough. Years passed. Riley rose through the ranks, earning her position through skill and dedication rather than celebrity. She became Captain Nash, then Commander Nash, leading missions that protected vulnerable species and established defensive partnerships across the galaxy. But she never forgot those desperate hours aboard the horizon's edge. She never forgot the moment she discovered the Wolverine inside herself, the relentless, furious will to survive and protect. She carried that memory not as a burden but as a reminder. Humans were capable of terrible things when necessary, but they were also capable of incredible compassion, strategic brilliance, and unyielding persistence. Those traits together made them unique in the galaxy. Other species learned this lesson. Aggressive civilizations thought twice before threatening human interests, knowing that humans would fight with shocking intensity when provoked. Peaceful species sought human partnerships, recognizing that humans would stand beside them against threats. A new phrase entered galactic common language, spoken across 1,000 worlds in 100 languages. Never corner a human. It was advice, warning, and compliment all at once. Humans preferred peace, but they would become whatever they needed to be to protect the innocent. They were the Wolverines of the cosmos, small compared to many species, easy to underestimate, but absolutely devastating when defending their own. Riley Nash embodied that truth. She had been a frightened cadet trapped on a damaged ship. She had become a legend, not through seeking glory but through simple refusal to accept defeat. And somewhere in neutral space on a Kravath world far from Earth, Huntmaster Dravik sat in disgrace. He spent his days telling other hunters about the human who had defeated him, warning them, ensuring they understood humans were not prey. They never had been. And the galaxy would never make that mistake again. Riley's legacy lived on in the beings she saved, the species she taught, the partnerships she forged. But most importantly, it lived in the simple truth she had proven through blood, sweat, and unbreakable will. Humanity's greatest strength was not violence or technology or numbers. It was the absolute refusal to give up, to surrender, to accept defeat when protecting what mattered. They were Wolverines, and Wolverines never quit.